So the Tata-Cornell Institute was set up essentially to look at the intersection between agriculture and nutrition, to understand the pathways to improve nutrition through better food systems, through better diversity of food systems, through more nutrition coming through better food consumption and diet diversification. And in this context, we've had a very strong relationship with ICRISAT. For several years, we've been working with ICRISAT economists in developing tools that will help us measure the diet diversity of poor rural households. So we've been working in ICRISAT villages in Telangana and in Andhra and in Maharashtra, trying to document the types of food poor rural households eat and trying to look at how do you create metrics around the diversity of that food, around the nutrition content of that food. Also, most recently, we've had a PhD student here, Anthony Wendt, who's working on looking at the incidence of mycotoxins, especially aflatoxin, in foods in India, foods such as peanuts, groundnuts, but also rice and sorghum and maize, etc. And he's doing a very intensive set of surveys in UP in northern India, but he's been working very closely with the lab, the food safety lab here, and working on essentially doing the analysis around those samples and trying to identify the incidence of mycotoxin contamination. He then will move on to looking at what are the preventive mechanisms, both from a production side, also from a post-harvest and storage of food, and how do you reduce that contamination. And when we think about malnutrition, we're not just talking about addressing the problems of hunger. Hunger in terms of a lack of adequate amount of food. And I think on that we've made a lot of progress over the last few decades. But in terms of the right types of food, the right types of diversity in the food system, the more higher levels of nutrition in the food system, etc. These are areas where India has been particularly lacking. And because of this, you see extremely high levels of malnutrition, especially among children, especially among women in rural India. And in addition to that, problems of poor sanitation, poor drinking water systems, overall lack of investments in public health infrastructure have resulted in a problem of malnutrition that's been very difficult to tackle. And it's, I believe, one of the top priorities for India if we want to be a truly emerging economy and a leader among developing countries. So there's several things that I think our collaboration can help. One, it'll help promote the staples that are not as popular today. I mean, looking beyond rice and wheat and maize, looking at bringing in millets into the food system, bringing sorghum into the food system. Certain millets and sorghums are much more nutritious relative to rice and wheat. And so expanding that basket of staples would be a major contribution. And this is where I think the work that we are doing with ICRISAT on diet diversity, on looking at promoting a more nutritious diet, etc., would be a natural link between the two. We also see opportunities where our work on plant science, our work on soil science, etc., can contribute overall to the work of ICRISAT in its own pursuit of enhancing productivity of smallholder agriculture, especially looking beyond the big staples.